Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about Pokemon more broadly. I've talked about Pokemon TCG a lot, and I'm going to be talking mostly about why I just won't be covering Pokemon anymore. And I kind of hinted at it a little bit in a previous video, but I just feel that Pokemon is it's one of those franchises that it's refused to move on. It's refused to actually become something interesting, and I mean that in a sense that is universally interesting. A lot of it is kind of appealing to nostalgia, appealing to the people who originally used to play the games, and I think that's fine. You want to be able to make it relatable to somebody, but I think over reliance on nostalgia has been a massive factor in why Pokemon is, in one sense, kind of suffering. Now, what do I mean by suffering? I mean that the quality is going down of the whole franchise. Pokemon is leaning far too heavily on, as I said, nostalgia, but it's also kind of trying its hardest to attract new fans by making mechanics that are more kind of over the top in terms of their focus, like Gigantamax and Gigamax and whatever else Max, and lots of appeal to the people who would be playing it streaming, the people who would be playing it through their official Nintendo program, and of course, lots and lots of online content. Now, I played Pokemon all the way through Leaf Green into Diamond and Pearl, into all the way up until I think Black and White, and then I stopped playing Black and White. Um, I played mostly again when it was X and Y, and one of the big things that I noticed from there was a lot of DLC to download. DLC, by the way, that is no longer accessible legally speaking. If you have the game on your console, even if you bought it, it's not accessible anymore. You can't download it, which is problematic for a huge myriad of reasons. You bought the content, you can't access it. It's just there's so many compounding issues with Pokemon and the Pokemon games and the Pokemon TCG specifically that I really am turned off from the franchise. And I think more and more people are starting to become turned off from the franchise because of the current Pokemon TCG situation, where nobody can get cards. It's more popular online than it's ever been because nobody can get cards. It's not a it's not a kind of vision of how things are actually going to be, how things are supposed to be. No, it's one of those situations where the popularity of one thing is making the other thing artificially good or, appealing in the eyes of the public. And generally speaking, I think the people who are saying, oh my God, Pokemon has never been so popular. No, it's been more popular, I think. It's been more generally appreciated and loved and cared about than now. But it has also been much more unappreciated. And nowhere is that more true than the TCG. There are sets out there that are worth a ridiculous amount of money, and there are sets out there that are worth nothing. So there's a huge kind of disparity between TCG. There are games out there that are old, that are worth a lot of money, but of course, if you sell the high seas, you can get these games for free, just not the Switch versions. I'm not saying that anybody should. I'm just saying that everybody should have access to games, and they should make it so that there is a playable copy of those games, the original publisher, at all times. If not, people will go elsewhere. So in terms of gameplay loop, in terms of all of these different factors, Pokemon is not it. It is not doing its job. It is not making its games accessible. Its old library. We just got Leaf Green and Fire Red. Yeah, great. It's essentially it's a copy of the emulated version. That's not what you would want. It's got rewind and fast forward features and fast saves features and all of this kind of stuff. I think, just from what I've read before. I'm not too sure if that's true, but it's just very scatterbrained and very unappealing to somebody who wants to seriously get into the franchise. Now, if you are somebody who really likes collecting Pokemon, by all means, collect Pokemon, enjoy Pokemon. But I just can't. I just I can't care anymore. They produce new versions for Raichu every single time there's a new game out. They produce new versions of this Pokemon or that Pokemon. I just don't care. Everything is a mock Pikachu or a variation of a Pikachu, or there's a flying Pikachu, or and the cards kind of reflect that as well, because of course the cards are based on what happens in the games. And overall, I just don't see the point. Pokemon is just not the best creature collector game anymore, for me anyway. I think probably Digimon or Dragon Quest Monsters is, and that's because it's unique to me. It's new. The combination element is really, really good, and being able to not just breed the same species and get stronger stats, but play the game and understand the combinations and kind of see what the evolution lines are kind of going to produce and inherit stats in the case of Dragon Quest Monsters. That's been really appealing to me. Pokemon is just very flat in that aspect. And I think it does lean too heavily on, as I say, the competitive scene. And the more the competitive scene kind of takes off and the more people are producing content that is around Pokemon and around Pokemon Go as well, which I will get onto Pokemon Go, it is less and less appealing to me. I just can't really, I just can't get it anymore. And I'm not paying the £700 plus to get all of the setup, to get a Switch 2, to get all of the parts, to get the game, all of these things, only for them to then release another one a couple of years later and say, right, now buy that one. No, I'm not doing it. And I think many people with the Switch 2 stuff, they're sort of looking at the financial situation they're in and saying, well, I could just build a computer, or I could just, just not play these games. Now, in the 90s, we probably would have just rented these games. Blockbuster was fantastic in our area for this kind of thing. If we just wanted to play a game for a couple of weeks, we would just rent the games. And in fact, that's how we sort of would spend our time and our money, our pocket money. We'd be renting video games, but that as a service doesn't make economical sense anymore, and it doesn't exist. So in the end, we are stuck in a situation where there is Pokemon refuses to innovate. It refuses to appeal to one set of fans or the other set of fans. Kids can't even get the cards. The whole situation is frustrating beyond belief. And I just don't want to deal with it anymore. So I'm not going to. And that's why I'm not dealing with Pokemon anymore. And I won't be covering anything Pokemon on this channel. And I think even if the 30th is an absolute roaring success and we all are given free packs in the street, I still wouldn't cover it because it's done so much bad. Like, the Pokemon company has done so much bad. I just can't I can't care. I don't give a crap anymore. Now, I think it's worth mentioning as well, there are other franchises that, off the back of them trying to sue Palworld and all of the other controversies that they were trying, they've been a part of, they have created so many, and I mean so many, competitors to Pokemon that are going to be better than Pokemon, or actually are already better than Pokemon. And I think it's incredible that their incompetence has done this, that people have to push back and say, look, the king at the top is corrupt and he's not wearing any clothes. So I'm going to produce my own version of Pokemon and it'll be better. Of course, we've seen Koromon, and Koromon is successful. And we've seen a lot of other, like as I mentioned, Palworld. We've got Monster Patch coming out as well. I am not opposed to the Pokemon format. I'm not opposed to the original Pokemon games. Scarlet and Violet, Red, Blue, Yellow. Sorry, Scarlet and Violet is the exception. It's the one that I am opposed to. I'm not opposed to Yellow. Um, I'm not opposed to all of the Pokemon games through Diamond and Pearl, even Black and White. I didn't play much of Black and White, but from what I've played of it before my DS died, I was quite enjoying myself. It's just the direction. It's the lack of motivation to change the franchise, to change the story, to change it so that it is more mature. And it is also greed. In the real world, when we're not talking about Pokemon as a series, it is greed. There's so much greed to do with Pokemon from scalpers and from the Pokemon company themselves. And in the end, it's really unappealing. People from the outside go, Jesus, that's worth that. Which it isn't. And, cards aren't worth what people are paying for them. It's just speculative investment. And sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, and sometimes you'll make money from it. I've made money from Pokemon cards, selling Pokemon cards for market price, for market value. And I'm not bothered anymore. I'm stepping out of that game. I'm not interested. And overall, I think just Pokemon is, for me, something I just don't want to cover anymore. And I've done a pretty good job of not covering it for quite a few videos now. But this is just me officially saying I'm finished with it. Not just as a sort of content creator, not covering it anymore, but as somebody who cared deeply about this franchise, who really did represent it for a long time, who bought a lot of the games. I just don't care anymore. And I think there's a lot of atrophy and a lot of exhaustion from all of this that a lot of people are feeling. And it's a shame. It really is a shame because the community used to be so sort of open and caring and, sharing their art and everything like that. And now Pokemon, it's a bunch of tryhards, a bunch of geeks who, and I mean that in the negative sense, a bunch of weirdos, and a bunch of people who are actively attacking you every time you bring up what you think the best Pokemon is, or what you think, you ask a question, what would be a good Pokemon for this team? And you get a bunch of min-maxing fucking losers. So, in the end, the only people who are sort of left is the people who really wouldn't want to be left in the franchise. That and little kids who, unfortunately, are being smacked in the face by Pokemon by them saying, sorry, little Timmy, you don't get to have access to the cards. You don't get to play the TCG. It's just how it goes. And we're all expected to accept this. We're all expected to say this is fine. It isn't. None of this is fine. The £70 entry point, or indeed £700 if you're buying a Switch 2 for the first time for Wind and Waves is unacceptable. The whole thing is unacceptable. We have perfectly working Nintendo Switch consoles. We could be playing with those, but we can't. We just are being treated the worst. And I just think it's time to punish Pokemon for it. And indeed, many people are. Many people are stepping away. And I'm not going to be free PR for them. I will be for Monster Patch. I genuinely will. And all of these other franchises that are coming out. Not because they are like Pokemon. There are things like Pokemon that have existed before Pokemon existed, as the lawsuit has sort of shown. There's all kinds of different franchises that are monster collectors that are not Pokemon. Like, I've been playing a hell of a lot of Dark Prince, Dragon Quest Monsters 3 Dark Prince. And it is nothing like Pokemon. It really isn't. Like, yeah, you have moves, yeah, you have creatures. That's the end of the similarity. It's much darker and a much sort of richer story than a lot of those told by Pokemon. And it feels much more mature. And it feels like it's something that more people will enjoy if they give it a chance. Monster Patch feels silly and quirky and fun from what I've seen from the franchise. And includes 2 different versions of the game in one. So as soon as that comes out, I'm going to be covering that on the channel. It's worth just saying, is it worth covering this franchise that is doing us a lot of harm? Is it worth actually involving ourselves with something that is really, really aggressively toxic towards us? Or do we move on? Because for years and years and years, there have been things that do not sit right with me at all when it comes to Pokemon. And I just think it's time to move on. I'm not covering the TCG, I'm not covering the drama, I'm not covering the card pricings, I'm not covering the bubble, which it is bubble. I'm not covering any of that. I won't even cover the downfall of the Pokemon TCG stuff. I just don't care. And my motivation for covering it originally was to protect people. To say to people, look what you could risk. Look what you could lose. Stop being so bullish. Stop being so aggressive with your players, your financial players, if you can even call it that, and start actually respecting yourself enough to not be buying this crap, buying the nonsense that content creators are pushing out and saying you should invest, you should invest, you should invest. Blind investment is really not a good look right now. And it's the kind of look right now that is making people really sort of really cautious about the TCG scene overall. Now, there are lots of different things that I could say about that. I'm not going to bother. I just think it's time to move on, at least for me personally, from Pokemon. And anything that is produced, I'll go, all right, okay, cool. I'll treat it like a Bionicle cock tease that Lego likes to do every couple of months. Where they go, oh, look, every 6 months you get a little dangle. No, it's not acceptable. Just go, oh, cool, fuck you. Next thing. Like that's how you got to treat it, how you protect yourself. Just dismiss it all. And that's what I'm going to be doing from now on. I'm just not covering it. I'll cover things like Pokemon, not because they are like Pokemon, but because it's a genre I enjoy. It's genuinely a group of games that I think is really appealing, and I think it's worth celebrating these games, especially because there are too many people invested, I feel, in the number one, the top dog. And they'll never leave. They'll be stuck in Pokemon forever, more than likely. And they will never try anything new. They will never try Coromon. They will never try Monster Patch. They'll never try Digimon. There's God knows how many Digimon games out there, and they're all really, really good. The ones that I've played, anyway. I can't speak to every single game that came out. They'll never try new TCGs. They'll only ever try the Pokemon TCG. If not, they'll just collect it. You can't, and this is something that took me a while to realize, and a lot of sitting there and reflecting on the whole situation, a lot of stressing about the situation. You can't save everyone. You can't protect everyone from the fall that's coming. And the more that's happening, the more situations where everybody's buying huge bulks of Pokemon cards, new cards, and then the next thing comes along and they sell them all to buy the next thing. The more I feel uncomfortable, and I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. And now it's gotten to the point where I've sat for a couple of months and I feel happy enough to say, I'm not playing the investing game. I'm not doing any of that. And I'm not even going to cover it on the channel anymore. Any kind of Pokemon news, really. So yeah, thanks for watching.